Well, let's just see what happens. Apparently, we're live streaming right now, so
let's go onto YouTube and see if that's true, I suppose.
yeah.
Okay, so we're getting super self-referential already.
Yeah.
If anyone's watching, switch off because this is like just a nonsense test.
No. No, it can get shit can get really fast.
What is a dinosaur gonna maybe jump? Oh, there we are. Is that what you you clickbaity motherfucker?
That's the last. I guess the last stream that I did was called Racism, Sexism, and Classism. So I guess that's our topic for this one as well.
Oh, so now we're on. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do an instant live stream on bigotry. Go. I'm unprepared.
All right. So how do you think that I've got Malin on the show today, and basically he's going to tell us about the difference between racism, sexism, and classism in the UK and Serbia.
I feel like this is an abuse of a philosophy degree.
Okay, yeah, it's working. All right, yeah. All right, so
the meta stuff is not not an abuse of a philosophy degree. Let's just be self-referential. Let's make a YouTube video about making YouTube videos which are self-referential.
Okay, yeah, well,
while watching that video on YouTube.
Okay, so you've lived in Serbia for about 2 years now. Since this live stream is accidentally called Racism, Sexism, and Classism. Well, how have you encountered racism against white people, against people like you?
No,
anti-gringo sentiment.
I'm pretty sure that doesn't exist
in Belgrade.
Maybe, well, if it does, it's well hidden enough that I haven't noticed it. Yeah, racism's totally different here. There was one study published by Oxford saying something like Belgrade is the least racist place in the entire planet.
Right, based on the it was based on showing pictures of people.
Was it just pictures?
Yeah.
I mean, the fatal flaw in the study was that it was entirely American based. They're like, what does racism look like? It looks like when you're mean to black people. So they only came up with pictures of black people. And Belgrade people saw black people and thought, this guy's American. And had no reaction whatsoever. And it's just all farcical once you consider the amount of anti-gypsy prejudice.
Okay, so yeah, but how do you see but my perception has always been that the anti-gypsy or Romani preference or prejudice in Serbia was a lot less than other countries in Eastern Europe.
Maybe. I've recently heard of an organization called Anti-Rom. I had to ask twice, really? Anti-Rom? Yeah, okay, so gypsy is a normal word, but Rom, as in Romani, that's a word to use to identify a racist group, the Anti-Rom.
Okay.
I was not aware of these guys before. Apparently they're responsible for some of the graffiti you see.
So they're against gypsies?
Yeah.
So what's their proposed solution for the gypsy
I don't know.
situation? Because they've been here for 1,000 years, and there's no country they can go back to. You just drop them all off in India?
I don't know. That should be the show. We get a random bigot, and we just ask them a very simple question, like we're on board. I've decided I want to be a white nationalist.
We're not on board. Don't say that.
No, just see where it leads you. Okay, let's be a white nationalist. What have you got for me? What does this have to offer in any way? Let's start a plan.
It's
we'll just see.
So why is your culture the best? Yeah, is the first question, obviously.
Yeah, maybe something like that. And just see how far you can get with, see if they can maintain a coherent worldview.
Okay, so why is Serbian culture the best? Because obviously, you and I both choose to live here, so there must be places where Serbian culture sort of exceeds Scotland and Canada.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm in favor of multiculturalism for self-centered reasons. I think people should just find their own place.
Yeah, well, I don't really call it multiculturalism, I call it transculturalism. So my philosophy is that most people, when they're immigrating to another place, they're looking for the cultural equivalent of a sex change. And I came here years ago, 10 years ago, and I went on this experiment, which was kind of like how can I make a blend of what I liked about North American culture, what I like about the Germanic culture that I get from my family, and what I like about the modern Serbian Slavic culture, and how can I make a mix of all three of those different things and make a mix that just makes it so, I'm fluidly going between the cultures. And, 10 years later, I'm actually massively successful in this because the thing that I like about the North American culture, money, and stability, I've managed to import here by starting this internet business. And, okay, so why... The next thing was, like, why do most people think that there's one country that's better than the other? I mean, rather than...
I'm not sure most people think that.
Yeah, they do.
Really? Maybe around Belgrade.
Most people. In Belgrade, yeah, people think that West is best, typically. And they grudgingly accept the benefits of their own culture.
Oh, that is a weird one. The surprised looks I get when everyone's like, really? Really? Scotland? You want to move from, like, the wonderful place to the rubbish place? And they don't seem to understand, like, I don't have to put up with the university system here or interact with the government. So after that, it's like, no, I'm fine.
And that, yeah, or actually bother having to make a living.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of this, the government, the minimum wage, all that kind of rubbish, it doesn't touch me. So after that kind of stuff doesn't touch you, it's like, look
it's
around.
It's just like,
this
hey, people are nice, beer is cheap, the women aren't bad looking.
Yeah, these are the metrics. In fact, it's somebody actually proposed an economic metric where you just get like a minimum wage. So Serbia doesn't come off well there, and then you look at
what is it, like 120 dinars an hour?
Yeah, something ridiculous,
something like
around €1. But you look at minimum wage and see how many beers it can buy you, and that was just the level of economic prosperity. So Serbia is doing pretty badly there, but I still think it's a good measurement.
Yeah,
it's like a really nice aspect. You say
food is more of a necessity. Yeah, I do like beer tests. And like beer is a sector of society that I like. For example, hiring people. I don't want to hire anybody who I wouldn't want to sit down for a beer with. That's a beer test. And yeah, so the beer test of how many beers can I buy with an hour's wage? That's a good one. What's another good beer test? How many beers does it take to make it so I can't walk straight? That's a beer test.
Some basic beers. I think my most important beer test is go into a shop and get the cheapest beer you can and see if you can like hold the thing down. Now Scotland fails this test dramatically. If you've ever had Tennent's, oh no, Tennent's is like it's like watery
I'm more
fish
into
juice.
cider, so in the UK I would never touch K cider or White Lightning.
White Lightning.
White Lightning.
It's a form of battery acid which has been fermented. With special Scottish scientists, the same people who brought you the battered Mars bar.
Yeah.
I presume they taste similar. Like I've not had the battered Mars bar. Oh, that's painful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
the minimum beer, the minimum food quality here is like it's actually not bad.
Yeah. So on to sexism. So you feel as a foreigner here, there's not much racism against you for being foreign.
I got a bit of sexism towards me.
Okay.
Yeah, first two landlords I went in, I was inspecting the place and automatically went towards the washing machine. Go like, okay, does this thing work? Because that's the thing that's going to break. And both landlords, old guys, were like, don't touch it. Nobody knows how the mysterious machine is working. Just leave it alone. With the second flat, I was with my girlfriend, and the guy's like, oh, she'll get it for you. It's fine. Like, motherfucker, I told you I was employed to solve computer problems, but not the washing machine. I mean, clearly that's too advanced for me. That's just like... my little male brain can't handle the thing.
Yeah, okay. But explain the difference between the gender roles that you had in Scotland versus here in Serbia.
The difference is we used to have, I think, more of a culture of particular... I'm not sure how to say the divide, but it was like a different divide. Like nowadays, if a woman is going into, medicine or a high-paying job or something like that, there's a little touch left in Scotland of an idea that this is somehow feminist and she's somehow like, we've moved from a male domain into this being like a normal female domain. Whereas in Serbia, there's no hint that this has anything to do with feminism whatsoever. This is entirely normal that a woman might go into any of one of these prestige careers.
Yeah.
there was no. It's like they've done the thing, but they kind of said like, no, we already did it a long time ago.
But that was socialism, I suppose, where it was everybody needed to have a job. You know, there was like, and of course you if you're a socialist regime and everybody needs to have a job, you want to not discount half the population from certain jobs.
Yeah, it'll be somebody handing people just like, okay, there you are, you're now employed.
Whereas in the free market, well, you know, it's like you can have lots of relics of sexism just because free market is dominated by well, people of a certain gender who prefer to hire other people of that same gender.
I think something to do with the planning, but I don't think it can be entirely about the market bit. It has to be about the planning, because, for example, in the universities, this is not free market whatsoever, but you still get a massive disparity of gender within particular fields, because it's not exactly planned. Nobody like grabs people and says like, we'll have one sociology, one a physics person.
That would be really bad if yeah. Anyways, yeah. But yeah, of course, there's massive disparity, and I think that typically there are some professions here. But do you feel that women in Serbia are more oppressed than women in Scotland?
No. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of sexism, so it's really tempting to say yes. Like it's more than normalized. It's like it is normal. This is just how it is. This is the standard. But on the other hand, there's a definite kind of strength of will here, where like you can ask a woman, what about all the sexism bit, and just so many are just brush this aside, like I don't care, none of this is phasing me. I just like if there's any of that nonsense, I just brush it aside. So that kind of domineering attitude almost seems like it's better to have a domineering attitude.
Yeah,
and problems.
Actually, this is what I always said about the racism in Serbia. Is it's better like people wear it. People will outwardly say that they hate gypsies or Albanians and then you can decide if you want to spend time with them. Then you can decide if you want to, work with them, socialize with them, any of those things. Whereas a lot of the time in countries like Canada or other more politically correct countries, people feel the need to sort of put the government or socially sanctioned view out there and then hypocritically behave and mutter under their breath, or only among certain people say, well, actually, I believe that na. And I think that's much more reprehensible than a society where people are allowed to actually just, be themselves, if themselves be racist.
Well, the end result is, I suppose, that where we come from, you can suspect that somebody might be a wee bit racist. You don't suspect somebody might be a wee bit racist here. Like, is he or is he not? Like,
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, he hates Hungarians. Oh, okay, yeah, he just told me he hates Hungarians. Yeah. All right.
Like, how do you spot a Serbian racist? Well, they tell you that they don't like gypsies.
Yeah, it's like, how do you know if somebody's vegan? They'll tell you. Yeah. The sexism thing. I mean, but I feel that there's more of a. They're satisfied more with their gender roles. They're trying to break less new ground with that stuff.
I know lots are. Maybe it's a British thing. In the back of my head, I'm constantly thinking like, if they had different ideas, then they'd start to want different things. I think the most obvious case is like guys who are satisfied. They're like, well, I'm a Serbian guy and I'm fine. Everything's groovy here. But these guys can't sew up their own trousers or cook for themselves properly a lot of the time, and it's just pathetic. It's like they're clearly making a mistake.
Yeah.
It would be better to be more self-sufficient.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like a lot of Serbian men go from living with their mom to living with their, girlfriend or wife, and well, self-sufficiency. But that's individual. You have to realize that Serbia is a much more collectivist culture than Anglo-Saxon or Western European, North American culture. It's much more like revolving around this. It's this idea of the collective here is like the family is number one, and families. In terms of you on your own in your life, it's probably a lot better to know how to wash your own clothes, clean your own apartment, cook for yourself, and all that stuff.
Yeah, just being an adult.
But in the context of a family unit, doesn't it function really well when you have gender roles that are somewhat traditional and people are satisfied with them? If they're satisfied with them. If they're not, you just go fuck off and do what you want. Fuck off from your family. Get out of whatever relationship is, treating you badly in this sense. But what would
the end result there is just saying if it's good, it's good. And of course, if it is good, then it's good. There's nothing wrong with specialization. I like specialization. I do particular work, and I don't do other work.
That's what I'm saying. And you should be able to do the work that you enjoy doing.
Yeah, so there's the problem, the gender role switch. That's a bit arbitrary.
I like cooking. I'm a cooking guy. I'm not such a good cleaning guy, but I'm a really good cooking guy. I can cook really well, and it's a passion of mine. And I would imagine if I had a wife, she'd have to one-up me on that if she was going to do most of the cooking, because I'm just so into food and putting together healthy options and making flavors that blow people's minds and all that stuff. So that's one thing. But if I had a wife, I wouldn't be at all disappointed if she took it as one of her responsibilities to clean things around the house.
Look, I was going to say, of course, you're not disappointed. I was actually disappointed. I got a bit annoyed. I had the most ridiculous argument in my entire life with a girlfriend at one point. Of course, Serbian, because I was cleaning the dishes. And they were my dishes. Like, I made the mess and then I cleaned them up. And she's just, like, freaking out. Like, get away from that. You're not allowed to do that because it's her job. Because she has to. I'm just like, how in the world did I come to the point in my life where I'm arguing that I ought to be doing more dishes?
Yeah.
But there is something infantilizing about this, and when you start to cut it across gender lines, you make mistakes. And people talk an awful lot about, there are essential differences, and I'm sure there are. But picking up the squeegee and like putting soap on it, this is not like a structure of the brain thing, a structure of the heart, or like upper body strength thing.
Okay, so why do you think she wanted you to not do the dishes? She's got a very particular picture, I think, in her head, and that picture involves her in the house doing the dishes, and she's like tending the place in some way. And did she seem to be drawing some sort of satisfaction from this?
Yeah, I mean, she genuinely does like making the place nicer and cleaner.
So, is there something wrong with that?
Yeah, it's still a bit infantilizing.
So you feel like it's your mother taking care of you and mama knows what's best. Oh, you silly little boy. How dare you try to wash the dishes? Mama's going to take care of it. You go enjoy yourself over there, little boy. Is that what you would mean by infantilizing?
Maybe something like that. But
yeah.
Or like just promoting weakness in general. Somebody should not, like when it comes to the basics, just everyone should be able to do this. And of course I'm entirely infantilized when it comes to fixing the washing machine, which I mostly can't do, or just any of the other complicated things in my life. I don't make my own cheese, and
I
that's
do
fine.
believe in specialization, like thoroughly, as the way that we've progressed so far in civilization. And I feel that in Serbia, actually, in terms of specialization, they don't respect it enough in terms of things like fixing a washing machine. And it might come from the economic situation, but they'd be much less likely to call an expert in this country who comes and fixes washing machines, and much more likely to call Uncle Jovan, who fixes washing machines, trucks, electricity, and knows how to plow a field.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
no, but
it depends
that
on
holds people back, because I feel that there's too much of this Meister mentality here. People are just like, I can fix everything. I can do. They want to be too self-sufficient in terms of like the people. Yeah, they're not in the family with the gender roles. They're less self-sufficient, but a man in a Serbian family should know how to fix a car for sure. And I don't know how to fix a car, and I don't really have any any inclination to learn, because that's something my North American upbringing is you drop it off to the guy at the shop. You don't need to hang around there and watch him do it. You don't need to help him, or you don't need to know what he's doing. You just pay the bill and then you leave it here. They all know how to wire this and fix this, and they all know about power tools. And I don't really feel that my sense of manliness is really attached to knowing how to build a house.
No, it was, so I suppose the self-sufficiency of a family unit is going to look extremely difficult. The UK and Canada are all very quickly going to look a bit pathetic when it comes to the whole family unit and what they can do, as opposed to, as you said, the Serbians, who most likely can get at least one person to make like the 3-day Christmas dish sarma, and another person to fix the car, and somebody else to...
Yeah, and it's all the collectivist sort of like family and friends will help each other out, and that's how these people survive so many wars in history. I mean, I commend them. It is really one of the good things about this place is people help each other out. You know, it's not just like, I'm not going to help you do that. Call someone who does that. You know, like it's like, if you need help, your friends are gonna come and help you, you know, do whatever you need, move house, help you build extra floor in your house. But they might do a shitty job. But at least people are willing to help.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit more of that here, I think.
Yeah.
A bit more of a collectivist, all for one attitude.
Yeah, and well, it's kind of, that's one of the things I always wanted to find a nice middle ground between like what I had in Canada and here. It's like, you know, knowing how to call the person who's an expert who will just get it done and you pay money, and then also having people who are going to help you out with stuff, also having people who are going to be you know, on your side for more than just what's convenient to them and all of that. So yeah, there's good stuff. Really good stuff in the in-between. Like one, because it's like fixing computers. Like, yeah.
There is. I mean, you can totally pull away the gender arbitrariness bit from that. You can have all the specialists revolving around a family and then just switch things. It's not like you need one particular gender for any of this stuff, really.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, in terms of, I see a lot more satisfaction and a lot less discussion about gender roles here in Serbia than I ever, you know, saw in Canada. There's just way too much discussion there about the whole issue, I feel.
We say while discussing it. I don't know, maybe. I think the most striking bit about the difference in discussion here was just that everywhere else seems to have taken the lead from these middle-class American universities. And it's not clear why the discussion has to come from this place. But it is clear that the discussion does come from this place because of the language and the jargon, even in the UK, all just filters down from this small set of people. And it's weird.
The American middle-class universities.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about the whole influence of, this, the ideas of whatever the ideas are that are in the world now. You feel that has penetrated the UK discourse.
Entirely saturated.
Yes.
I mean, there is no other discourse. It's weird to me that people start talking about racism in the UK front and center in terms of black people, like that, and like discussion of the N words. It's like, hang on, we've got the P word. This is our thing. I don't know if anyone knows what the P word is, but it's, you know, we have our own thing. We've got our British racism. Like, why are we not dealing with this? No, okay, we'll deal with the American Indians instead. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure which P word you're talking about. Is it
Paki, short for Pakistani?
Oh, okay.
It's tricky because from outside you think Scot, short for Scottish, Oz, short for Aussie, Paki, short for Paki. That's a fine word.
Yeah. It's yeah. No. We had that one in Canada too. Yeah. And yeah.
Like, but you don't know it's a racial slur until somebody tells you. It's just essentially harmless. But it does, like, in the UK, it sticks in your throat. Like, you hear it and you go like, that's a racist term.
Yeah, and like the whole thing about Paki dots or something, when it's actually a Hinduism symbol, and Pakistanis are mostly Muslim, like that sort of ignorance. And we can agree that around the world that sort of ignorance is quite common, and we would like it if there was less of it.
Obviously so, but it's just weird that we have this the thing in Britain, but we've decided that we're discussing black people in America, slavery.
Yeah,
and
America's very good at exporting its worldview, and one of the things is its idea of because the issue of African Americans in the United States is unique to the United States. It's not something that is even in Canada, and it's not something that's in the UK, and definitely not something that's on continental Europe in the same way. It's a history of, their country, and they tend to export it. And
well, that was the other weird one that I just often hear people saying, like, oh, you need to say African American. Like, no, not in the UK. We don't have these weird negative associations with black. We just have said black and white forever.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm not going to say African British. Jesus, just imagine He's not African British. He's just British, isn't he? He's not. Just a ridiculous term.
Well, then where's the distinction between someone who's a native of the British Isles and somebody who perhaps is second or third generation or fourth generation, perhaps via the Caribbean, perhaps via... I mean,
you could say the country. You could say like Indian heritage or whatever from India.
Yeah. African heritage.
Yeah, I mean, or just whichever the country's from. I suppose it doesn't really come up. No, I do have Indian family. I call them Indian in the context of British, but generally they're just British, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things. Like, Britishness is a very shifting thing into the 21st century, or especially now. I mean, the shift is going to be massive over there, especially if your country, Scotland, decides to leave. You might have another Yugoslavia going on there, but it will be much more polite, I would imagine.
I imagine an awful lot more polite. Besides, the English don't have very many sheep left to steal, so like it would be pointless. That's all the wars were there for at the beginning anyway.
Yeah, exactly. We are reading the comments, by the way, folks. Marco says African Scottish. Yeah. Do you have any African Scottish friends?
African Scottish. No. I mean, you'd need a country, wouldn't you? You'd need to get an actual, you could be maybe Cameroon Scottish. I think you can be, I've got a South African Scottish friend. I mean, he's white, but he's South African Scottish.
Yeah, okay.
So you can do that one.
Yeah, all right. Why do you need a country?
Because otherwise it doesn't match. It's like Indian and English, that works because they're two countries, and then suddenly you're like, I don't know, like Eurasian Portuguese. That's a mismatch.
European American?
Yeah.
I would consider myself European American because I was born on the American continent, even though I'm Canadian. It's like, where do you draw the line between the continent and the region? It's like, and what part of the continent, actually? Because in North America, we call Asian people like Chinese, Japanese, Korean people. That's what we consider Asian. But in the UK, you consider Asian people to be South Asians, like India, Pakistan, and... That's
another word that just needs to go. We need to bring in, like, Oriental as a normal term or something. Like, Asian is just the worst term. Like, what do you mean, Russian? Russian people from
like
Asia?
North Asia is Russia. Russia is North Asia. And also part of Eastern Europe.
This is just the most useless term ever invented. It covers things which is not meant to cover. And it's not even clear what people mean. You can't even say, like, oh, you know what people are saying. Like, I don't. It could be talking about Kazakhstan or North Korea, for all I know.
Yeah, exactly. So, my whole perspective on this whole thing is like, we just need to define language based on where we are. And my whole perspective with the transcultural thing is people are too touchy about all of this stuff, I think. And you need to just
hang on,
construct yourself.
No, we need to back up. Talk about language from where we can't say that on YouTube.
What?
Don't talk about defining language from where you are on YouTube. It's an international platform. We're now
defining. No. What I mean is having words forced on you from a university in another country is really not optimal for your expression linguistically.
It does look pretty sickening. I'm trying to think of examples real world examples. Okay, so Czech Republic did this, and I suppose they got on fine with it. I mean, the government just came in and said, we've removed 1/3 of the dictionary, we've now changed it. There you go, there's your words. And apparently that just happened. People had to be and go on with it. I don't see any benefit to it.
Well, no, but yeah.
Maybe Czech spelling is more regular, like it's easier to learn now. It's clearly not worth the benefit at this stage.
Yeah, so we got a comment from Brandon who says, in the U.S., natives like to call themselves natives, okay? Sometimes by their tribe, okay. Well, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It's like native. We know in North America, we know what that means, native, because obviously Europeans are not native to we're native to Europe, but
yeah. Although there is the issue that all of the official words still use the word Indian. All of the bureaus, the government laws, the sentences, everything just
but then there's the third word, which is indigenous, and because India, the story goes that Christopher Columbus thought he had landed in, I'm not sure how true this is, thought he had landed in India when he got to North America. That's why he called them Indians, but I think it was actually derived from the word indigenous.
That sounds a bit more plausible.
Yeah.
Even though it's not the official word, I like indigenous because it's just clear. Like, I know what you're saying. It's very, very simple. No room for ambiguity.
Yeah. So, do you feel indigenous to the British Isles?
No. So I've got like half Irish who themselves came over from somewhere around Spain. There used to be a Celtic people, and then they murdered a bunch of the Scottish. They were called the Scots-I, the invaders. So then they called it Scotland. There was a bunch of pigs murdered. Then I've got some English heritage, and that's from Anglia. It's just been a big soup.
You're aware of your heritage. A lot of people aren't.
I know. I feel like you could almost guess by looking at the region. Like, okay, we've been here 2 generations, so what was here before that? Lots of more.
But there's no place like this. Is the whole. You hear all this noise about this idea of cultural appropriation and how it's something that white people appropriate other cultures. It's like everybody is constantly traveling around the world, and throughout history there have been different groups moving to different places, influencing and mixing with each other, and that's how we get culture. That's like, and there's what I like to see. My transcultural philosophy is you're going through your life and you're upgrading your culture based on other influences. That's why I moved to Serbia.
Right.
You're upgrading. If the goulash in Serbia is better than the soup back home, you're gonna make that.
I feel like this anti-cultural appropriation thing is one of these ideas that's so stupid that it must be badly phrased. Like, there must have been a reasonable idea at the heart at one point, which has now just got lost, because nobody would start off.
No,
just
the
by
reasonable idea was, I think, something. It was something about when you take somebody's tradition and sort of mockingly appropriate it.
I can see for Halloween, like I do get a bit of an eye roll when seeing CU Jimmy hats, the little Scottish bonnet and the little ginger hair that comes with the bonnet. So you put it on, and then you can be a drunk American in Edinburgh, and you're running around with like your fake kilt and your wee CU Jimmy hat. I do get a bit of like, okay, it's not very tasteful, is it?
Yeah, but confusing taste with morality is kind of it's kind of something. There needs to be like taste and morality are 2 different things. I mean, there's going to be no matter what, people are going to do things that you find tacky, and well, all right.
Right, but I'm just trying to understand the cultural appropriation idea, like as if maybe it comes from some instincts like this, like that's tacky, and then it's just raised up to a particular level. Where
Yeah,
you're like, you need to cut this shit out.
It comes down to is like white people can't have dreadlocks. Like, what the fuck?
Oh no, that was just like a misunderstanding.
But I don't really think that white people look good with dreadlocks, or that I'm not a fan of dreadlocks. I'm just don't. They're not my thing. But if people want to have them, great. Like.
Right. I mean, so dreadlocks weren't really a thing from anyone's culture. That was clearly one of the misunderstandings.
No, it just starts happening if you don't wash your hair.
I hear there is a bit more preparation in there.
No. It happened to me once. I had this long hair, like not as long as yours, but like down to my shoulders, and I was neglecting my hygiene at that point, and
You got dreads.
Yeah, I started getting dreadlocks. Yeah,
Okay.
they weren't nice.
It's possible to get nice dreadlocks. But yeah, that's definitely not a cultural thing. Because like, where is the culture that has dreadlocks? Like which
Well,
one?
the Rastafarian culture in Jamaica.
And at the other side of the world, we've got Egypt, right?
Okay, I wasn't aware of Egypt having dreadlocks.
And India.
Okay.
So which culture is it appropriating from?
Exactly. It's a completely nonsense argument, and basically, and at the same time, even if people do want to do horrible racist things, as they always have and always will, why should we nice, Western people know better than them about how they're behaving? Like, this is the thing. I try to avoid telling people how to live. Because the thing about all these American universities right now is they tell people how to live.
Oh right, yeah. There's the pushing outside bit is the odd bit. There's definitely a problem of declaring things on the internet, which I find a bit distasteful. And I have to admit, like most of the places I go to on the internet is populated mostly by Americans. But still, the fact that it's not 90%, it's not even close to 90%. Just that alone means I find it a bit distasteful when people make these assumptions about various things. Even had somebody online saying, well, you need to, if you're white, you just need to consider your history and with slavery. And I asked, okay, what about Polish people? And this person immediately responded something about, that's a problem. But she was coming from the point of view of, when I said, what about Polish people, I meant, what about Polish people in Poland who have no history interacting with this whatsoever? And the poster was thinking that I meant, what about American Polish people? Which she considered Polish and I considered to be American. Like, if you're in America, you're American.
Okay.
So the worldview was so centered around this thing that the word Polish person means American Polish person. And the talk still goes out to the rest of the world.
Yeah, so Polish people were largely a part of other people's empires for a lot of history, and but and so to blame them for slavery, it's like, no. How about we only blame the people who do things for the acts, and the idea of collective guilt. I don't know. It's like, it is comprehensible that some beliefs which are racist may be handed down from generations of Americans to new generations of Americans, despite the fact that they haven't owned slaves in several generations. But people on the other side of the planet, like, how do you? Yeah.
So that's clearly going too far. But I still feel like there's something within these ideas. Like, let's look at a really short example, and we're going to have to jump away from some measure of individualism. Like, let's say you grow up in a house and then your parents die and somebody comes with hard evidence that their family, their grandparents lived in that house and then they were just forcibly ejected and killed and said that's not cool. At this point, even though you've done nothing and you're in the house legally and legitimately and everything's fine, at that point, wouldn't you start thinking like, oh, you're kind of in a situation where you're sort of responsible for what somebody else has done?
Well,
there's something there.
That's a really tricky one.
Yeah, it's not a really definite no, is it?
So
you're not just free, are you?
No,
you're
no,
not
no,
just
no,
like
no. Okay, so the house is okay. So this could be a very real thing in Serbia, and the people who would most likely have these claims would probably be the Jews and the Germans, who over a generation, between in the 30s and the 40s. I also absolutely wiped out from this country.
And the Muslims, I knew somebody actually who, there was a family legend that they wanted to dig up some gold Grandpa had buried, and when I asked why did Grandpa have gold, she just said, it was back in those days. I kind of pieced it together. It's like he took an awful lot of money and it was super illegal and buried it somewhere. Presumably the owners were at this point dead. So yeah, this is totally like a real thing.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, say my great grandparents were in Serbia, and after or during or World War II, their land, they got run out. Someone else started living in their house, and now 2 or 3 generations later, we come back and say, here's the papers, this is our house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it gets really tricky.
So you can definitely see there's we can't do the purely individualistic bit, because if we could specify that maybe all the grandparents are dead, everyone involved in the original incident is dead, you're responsible for nothing, and yet it's still possible to have like some onus on you to do something. Maybe you're not responsible, but maybe like a responsibility in some sense, right?
I think in that sort of situation, probably the best thing would be is if the government just made a settlement, and that governments making settlements are the extent that I think collective guilt should exist.
Okay, so I mean, it sounds like you'd be in favor of general reparations.
For what?
Some people have suggested reparations for slavery. Some people have suggested it for more specific things. Like if the government organized it and you thought it was being done with basic competence.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay.
It depends on which country, what the story is, all that stuff.
What if reparations had been suggested in 1950? Would you be more on board with it?
What do you mean?
Well, if it were 1950, we'd be far closer to the time when there were larger problems, and there would be people who remembered.
A lot of the time, it's not always possible to do that quickly because, okay, so 1950, you've still got a recovering society where even the people who are still living here the society is still in shambles, and you have this sort of like situation where the communists are still, putting in their communist order, and the communists have just, cleansed all the Germans from the country, and who were also the oppressors who cleansed all the Jews from the country, and they're still recovering all of that and putting in their order and all that stuff. It's not until like not until Tito died that you could even have a conversation about any of that, because all of those things were put into a deep freeze of we're not going to talk about that stuff. We are not going to talk about Serbs killing Croats. We are not going to talk about Muslims, and we're not going to talk about religion, ethnicity, anything. Yugoslavia, here we are, let's do the best we can, and they did a pretty good job. Until the 90s, and then people started talking about that stuff, and yeah.
So. But I mean, so these are practical considerations, but now you've dodged the moral question with questions of practicality. There's still...
Should there be a time limit?
Well, is it a limit, or does it decrease? Like less responsibility over time? Is it £5 per year? What's the going rate for a genocide per year?
Oh man, yeah. I don't really think that there's any moral sort of line that you can draw here.
Well, what interests me is the fact that I don't feel there's a moral line, and yet I know there is, because if you have, say on this occasion, reparations are owed because you just killed somebody and kicked them out of the house, and then you go a couple of doors down, like, okay, your parents killed somebody and kicked them out of their house, you need to do something. And then you go 100 years or 300 years later and you say, like, everything's fine, it's in the past, what's done is done. It's like a logical necessity. Like, at one point between A and C, there's a line. Now, I don't know where the line is, and I can't make any claims about it, but you can't say, like, that doesn't happen at any particular point. Clearly, it happens at a particular point. It happens somewhere before the 300 mark, I think we're in agreement. 300 years, right?
Yeah, that would be too long.
Okay, 50 years?
I don't know.
No, I mean, we could just... I don't even know how to hunt for this line.
100 years.
100 years is the maximum.
Sounds good.
Okay. I mean, it also sounds entirely arbitrary, but then it sounds good to me as well, which is a bit weird. Are the reasons for this? I don't think so.
if it happened over 100 years ago, how likely would it be that you or anybody you knew met anybody who this happened to?
Okay, so like the first person
Like,
experience.
okay, so I know my grandparents. My grandmother's still alive. She's 93. She remembers the Russian communists and the horrors that happened when they took Bratislava, and the circumstances that led her and her husband personally deciding to leave the city. She remembers that. So that was in 1945.
There's an interesting point. So just to jump away from the murky moral grounds, as the only point was that we're not going to get any answers, that was something that really interested me. Nazis are not really meme-worthy. That's edgy, it's bad, and you don't do it. And Russians are totally meme-worthy. You can have wee gulag jokes. That's funny. You put wee memes on the internet. But yeah, I know a Polish guy, and his parents were sent away to Siberia, and Siberia is now funny, but it's like it wasn't. It was like legitimately the horror of the freezing cold, eternal working snow until you're dead.
Well, it's a gradient of taboo, isn't it? It's like a sort of like.
No, it's entirely not. That's the weird thing.
No. Like, as in, like, it feels kind of naughty to make a Soviet joke, but it's not, because you're mocking somebody's suffering or something.
Mm-hmm.
It feels kind of edgy to sort of wear a communist shirt and to have a communist flag or something, but it's not. It's not off the menu. It's not recommended.
Yeah, it's not off the menu.
Like Hitler jokes aren't that popular.
Yeah, no.
So then it becomes something that you would sort of nudgingly do with your friends, and you wouldn't do it in public.
I mean, that could happen with either. I tried to think of this distinction.
Because
At one
the
point,
taboo makes it even more funny when it's like.
Yeah, well, of course, the taboo is always going to make it more funny, but there's still this really deep difference that it's still kind of acceptable to do the whole Soviet Union meme funny bit. At first I thought, like, well, maybe it's because of the group, like, because if you say, haha, Nazis, you're kind of saying, like, if you're Jewish, it was kind of funny that your granny died in a horrible way. Whereas with the Soviets, you're kind of threatening the bourgeoisie, the upper class. But then I got away from that. I was like, no, this must be wrong because, okay, they did murder lots of rich people, and maybe that is funny. And those rich people nowadays aren't like a class, and they don't feel threatened. And it's not like won't somebody think of the bourgeoisie? But at the same time, they also murdered countless like gypsies and Poles and Jewish people. They just did that as well in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So I'm still floundering as to like, wait, why is one funny? I'm not even sure which way I should go.
Because we don't actually, as a society, that's how it evolved. And it's because of a constant push of certain, it's always like the interest groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really have interest group which is advocating for victims of the Ukrainian famine in the same way that you have interest groups who are advocating for Holocaust memorials and all that stuff. It's an interest group thing. It's just like politically lobbying. Why do we have all these pro-pharmaceutical laws in the United States? Because there's a lobby group that gets in your shit if you do anything to prevent.
So that's pretty convincing. It does sound like lobbying, but then that leaves some pretty sickening alternatives.
It's PR.
Like either, but okay. So now, what's the proper reaction to that? Because I feel like the proper reaction should either be calm down about Nazi jokes. I don't feel like I do want to calm down about Nazi jokes. Like I still think that's really distasteful. But on the other hand, I could say like, okay, then let's get equally excited when somebody makes a little Stalin meme. Let's get equally irritated and say, like, that's not cool, there were a lot of people dead. And I also don't want to do that. I don't want to do the censorshipy thing at any point. So
either it has to be allowed to make Hitler jokes? Is that what you're saying?
I was saying either it's got to be, either Hitler becomes funny or Soviet Union's just, all the communist memes are off the table. I feel like we need to do one or the other in order to be consistent.
But why would you, you can realize that, out of principle,
yeah,
right? But that's not how people's emotional brains work.
Well, sure, I'm not saying other people are going to do this. I'm saying if that's your stance, that sounds like a plausible stance to me, that this difference is a PR stunt, then you can either decide that from now on you're going to act according to other people's PR, or you can just not do that.
I think we are always going to act according to other people's PR, no matter how individualistic we are, and because we are trying to communicate it in a way that pleases other people, because that's one of the things that communication achieves, is creating common ground between people.
You're going to do that a certain amount, but presumably once you notice a thing is PR, then you recognize it's a good thing to just start ignoring that and to go with the accurate bit. And now the accurate bit seems to be that Nazis are about as bad as the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even sure about like where the death tolls were.
Let's go more back to that idea of political correctness in Serbia. I mean, we've got someone named Sour Banana in the chat here saying, "I love living in Serbia. A great way to escape crazy Western culture where you can get accused of rape for looking at someone wrong or lose your job for sneezing the wrong way." Obviously, an exaggeration.
Like that's a major. Like, I have never sneezed in public. No, I've never been accused of any of this stuff.
No. But okay, but yeah, you have to understand that. It is a breath of fresh air to be in a country like Serbia where you can talk about things without worrying about people policing you based on ideology, because they tend to be, policing based on ideology, but like a default ideology. There's no default ideology here.
That's quite a twist from what Mr. Banana said. Like, okay, open conversation, anything on the table, that sounds good. The other statement was it like, I keep getting accused of rape for nothing. Was that what you said? I can't read from here. I'm pretty sure that's accurately paraphrased.
You can get accused of rape for looking at someone wrong.
Really? I'm looking at you wrong right now. Okay.
Well,
I'm looking at Mr.
Well,
Banana wrong.
I would say that it is true in the Western world that you can get accused of sexual harassment for looking at somebody in a certain way.
I think you could have a sufficiently creepy stare that people were like, cut it out. Maybe possibly that went too far on occasion. Keep up for 5 minutes. I think we've got a lawsuit here.
Yeah.
I can see like more or less sensitivity, absolutely. But
So obviously, yeah. It's always, yeah. I don't know. Have you ever felt sexually harassed by a woman?
Not so much. I mean, it's clearly a problem that happens more to women than men.
Yeah, exactly. And And would you say so...
But I've never felt like I need to like watch my behavior, or somebody might think I'm being like really rapey.
Maybe because your acceptable behaviors are ingrained in you culturally from growing up in Scotland.
Well, I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that my ingrained behaviors are fairly acceptable. They're not too offensive to other people. Yeah, that sounds like a good thing to me.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, remember that thing a couple weeks ago about the consent training in American universities?
Oh, yeah, that's again just like
like that you need to ask somebody like, "Can I put my hand on your thigh?"
Oh, that was properly creepy.
Yeah. But what's creepy is that you actually have to ask. Like, they're actually telling children how to have sex with each other, just in case. Or, like, that it's gone into the... Yeah, it's like... Because my thing about, the whole thing is, like...
I'm now picturing a porno shot by, Tommy, who made The Room. Lisa, you're tearing me apart.
Okay, who's the guy on the right? So this is Malin. Yeah, this is Malin. Hey. He's from Scotland. He's lived in Serbia for 2 years. He's a friend of mine, and we work together and all that stuff. And we're actually just doing a test live stream today. We hit the thing, and then I realized that the last time I did a live stream, the title was Racism, Sexism, and Classism. That got carried over onto this one where we didn't choose it, so that's what we're talking about now for almost 1 hour. So
this is actually on this. This is the power of default. We had a default title. We just went with it.
Yeah.
This is the problem with racism, sexism, and classism. You get defaulted into things. You could become an astronaut if you're born very poor, but it's not the default, is it? The default. The default.
So now we're on to classism. All right.
Yeah.
Right. So do you? I feel more comfortable with. Okay, so I think we're coming from similar backgrounds. I guess mine's more urban than yours, but I grew up in a upper middle class environment in a neighborhood with upper class people as well, and sort of there was a minimum affluence of my neighborhood that did not actually extend beyond the borders of our neighborhood. So it turns out that I was raised in an environment where I did inherit a lot of snobbery from the people around me, and it was difficult for me to socialize with normal Canadian people, average Canadian people, in the same way and put that aside, which is one of the reasons that I moved to Serbia, actually, is to get out of that sort of upper middle class bubble. Yeah, it's a bubble of like everybody's got money, everybody's super fine, everybody's really nice to each other, and everybody's got nice houses where they leave each other alone. And everybody is somehow nice, influential and privileged and all that stuff. Yeah, it's way too nice. I've talked about it on Belgrade Beat a lot of the time. Yeah, it's way too nice, this bubble I was in. But it was just like I knew there was a lot more to life. And then, coming to Belgrade the first time in 2006 and then again in 2007 led me to go, oh, fuck this. I don't want to live in that boring place because it's just way too easy. I need, there was, Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan podcast said that Canada is like elevator music. Canada is like elevator music when there's a whole symphony out there in the world, whereas Canada is like elevator music. People who have been there will know what I'm talking about, but Canada is like elevator music where it's just, you want to keep it nice and light. You want to keep it going on, and everybody just wants to do it. And being upper middle class in Canada was the easiest, nice and light sort of existence I could possibly. People wouldn't bat an eyelash when I told them that I wanted to charge $85 an hour to show up at their house and like plug in a computer. $85 an hour. I did 2 or 3 of those a day. Maybe let's say 6 of those a week. But I needed like $2,500 to have a nice lifestyle there. And anything over that was great, and life was just too damn easy. So then I came to Serbia, where life is a lot more hard for people. It's a lot harder to get work like that. It's a lot harder to negotiate things with other people. It's a lot harder to sort of make ends meet. But there's a resilience in people and sort of a richness culturally and warmth and connection between other people that I found, which was much more rewarding. And it's based on the fact that they didn't have it that easy. Based on the fact that if your computer was broken, you had to call Uncle Jovan, who knew how to fix it, and rather than calling the guy and paying him $85 an hour, you relied on relationships with people, and those relationships tended to transcend class a lot.
That also, okay, so that all sounds quite plausible, though it doesn't seem to be a class thing, particularly as I can't imagine that lower class Canadians are just massively more warm. I mean, maybe they are, but that sounds more like a general cultural thing. They are?
Yeah.
More lower class? Okay.
Yeah, I would say yeah. The in North America specifically, it's us sort of posh upper middle class people who are kind of the like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'll just be in my little bubble here. Whereas like working class people in especially the United States and also Canada, they're always up for a chat. They're really friendly and open compared to us. Definitely. And in a similar way that Serbian people are more open. And the thing that I noticed about class here, maybe it's a relic from socialism, nobody really has this sort of, the linguistic registers are the formal linguistic register and the casual one. And in public, people are using both with strangers. And obviously older people are spoken more to in the formal register. But after that, you don't really have this linguistic class distinction like you would in the United Kingdom, for example.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've never seen that, but like, as is so typically the case with Serbia, you come from outside, and if you start saying left wing, right wing, you've made a mistake. And with class, it seems like the mistake is to imagine that same kind of class. But I have found that distinction with cities and villages. there's a bit is like a class distinction. Like people in cities, they know what's what. They're worldly. They all speak English, and when they reference people who lived in villages, they literally use the word peasants. Like there's this like is almost got a racist feel to the way that peasants.
Yeah, so the divide is rural versus urban. So the urban people are the ones who had, in the Yugoslavia times, the university education, which gave them a job for life, and the whole system of sophistication is largely an urban thing, whereas peasants, as you said, peasants. So Yahtzee.
Yeah, and the peasants, like I don't know any of the Serbian villages, but from what I hear, this is more the place where people still will shoot a gun in the air at a wedding.
Yeah,
These
yeah.
are the
Well,
places
it
where-
could be kind of kitschy if you're like not a peasant, but yes, they will do that, and they tend to, you know, all the stereotypes of peasants, you know, that you would have from the I guess, I don't know, pre-modern time in the UK, like people without teeth and all that stuff. And yeah, you can find that here in Serbia, and people with, you know, who are just living off the land, and people who...
The most striking one I saw, I knew somebody whose great-grandmother, so this is like 3 generations ago, but still not that long ago, her great-grandmother was delivered to her husband upon a cart pulled by horses. So she had never met this man before. The horses pull up. There are goods in the bag. The goods are a wife, and somebody just like picks her up and says like, "There's your husband. Go cook. Go clean. Bye." That was the entire thing.
Okay, so we have a comment from Sour Banana again. The remote Serbia is amazing, but some people hate strangers. Okay, question here. Do you speak Serbian? Because you might be getting something wrong here if you don't. Because I have traveled a lot of places in Serbia, and I do speak Serbian, and I've never felt any sort of animosity for being a foreigner who speaks Serbian. But foreigners who don't speak Serbian, I would imagine that it is possible that there could be some xenophobia. But
Yeah.
maybe it
I think I can close most of the gap just with the small bit of Serbian I know. Even a few couple of stuttering words, and as soon as they say like, okay, he's getting there, he's got a wee bit, then you're mostly gold.
Yeah, but yeah, whatever xenophobia you're feeling might just not actually be a hatred, but it might actually just be a frustration of a lack of their own ability to communicate with you. I mean, a lot of people here feel embarrassed when they don't speak English, actually. And I think that's it's a pretty cool thing to have in a country like this, where that would be an attitude, that it's embarrassing not to speak English, because it just shows that
that's the level of education.
That's the level of education and the level of wanting to reach out to the world.
Yeah.
Which is very high here. And I think that's what a lot of people don't really understand when they think of Serbia, especially people who have never been here, that this is a country full of really friendly, really hospitable people who are just waiting to explain, share everything they have in their culture with you.
Yeah, though again, that experience, I mean, I've had that from the cities. I just don't have experience in the villages so much, like a tiny bit. They were quite welcoming, but I think that was maybe it.
Well, whatever it is in the cities, the villages are more welcoming, so...
Really?
Yeah.
I went to one, but I always assumed it's just because I was a bit of a tourist, and it must have been a bit of a touristy place.
Where?
Bela Crkva.
I've heard of it. I haven't been there. Okay, yeah.
It's a nice place.
Yeah.
The locals were nice. They were so nice. They tried to make me something vegetarian. I ended up eating rice and potato.
Okay. That is vegetarian.
It is vegetarian. It was the only thing I could get.
Beans would have been the other staple that you could have indulged yourself in.
I think I managed to get one place for beans.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like, vegetarian. What about the sausage?
Yeah, but classism doesn't seem to be as much of a problem here in Serbia. That's the thing. There's the rural-urban divide, but I feel that people who are from Belgrade, they tend to be in this mess together, no matter how much money somebody has, because they all kind of remember the hard times. And a lot of people...
Well, I'm trying to list off in my head the specific features that I get from the UK. Okay, so one.
Accent-based discrimination.
Okay, that's a good start. Yeah, so we got less of that.
Yeah, definitely.
I can't hear that myself. But
Access to education.
see, that's where I get a bit of a stopping point, because it seems there's more because I come from a country with like really permissive education. Like anyone can be educated, that's fine. And yet you go to the university.
Yeah, but
and
you're
there's
going.
a
Wait. Hold up. Where do you go to school? So if you're in the government-funded school system,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to the one in your neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
So neighborhoods tend to be divided quite dramatically across
entirely
class
class-based.
lines, and anybody who's middle class or upper middle class or upper class will want to live in a good neighborhood, so their kid, even if so upper middle class and upper class are sending them to the private schools, right, which you ironically call public schools, but public schools in America are the ones that are funded by the government, and private schools are the ones that you pay to have your child go there. So the ones that are funded by the government, say you're middle class, you want to be in a good neighborhood, not a working class neighborhood, so your child will go to...
Some people even change religions in the UK in order to...
Yeah, so that's what I mean by access to education, because you know that the access to education means that you don't have equal... If you're going to...
Okay, so that point, I was thinking universities, but the earlier stuff is more important. So let's focus on the earlier stuff.
Because that's what will define the way that someone speaks.
Yeah, let's actually...
the peer group, which then defines the way that other British people are going to hold them to their class the rest of their life.
Yeah, in fact, one of my sociology lecturers once said, like, if you have a choice, always do the payment system for your child's primary school. After that, he said, the damage has been done.
Yeah.
And I found that quite true in my own life as well. It's those formative years, and in fact, the things start so young that I sometimes worry about the basic idea of meritocracy. Like, how do we get this thing off the ground? Because we can't have, unless we want to start state-funded nurseries, which might not be a bad idea. That might be fine. But if you're not doing that, then you've got those early years, and you just make sure people are not off to the same start at all from the beginning.
Exactly, because I went to a public government-funded school in one of the richest neighborhoods in Canada, and therefore I was like next to kids whose parents owned all these big businesses, super successful people, and that's why I ended up with this worldview that I have. Had I been going to school in a different neighborhood, it would have been much different. So that's an access to education. Whereas here in Belgrade, I guess there would be a little bit of differentiation between the different parts of Belgrade that you grew up in and the schools that you went to. But
how are the schools assigned? I feel like at this point we need to grab a local and ask for some economic breakdown. I bet they don't know. I bet it's not something they discuss. I bet they assume some sort of rough equality and a government mess, which sort of ends up with just random money flying all over the place.
And bureaucracy. But yeah, I think that here it's a much more flat social hierarchy, where you have everybody was sort of flattened during the socialist time and then pushed down even more by the 90s and the troubles that ensued after that. People who were, educated, influential socialites and stuff like that, and, somehow prestigious through education and maybe career, in industry or whatever, they did rise up a bit more, but they were also beaten down in the 90s, a lot of them. And I think that, the people who are running the society now, it's just, and even like, and the world wars did eliminate a lot of traditional upper class people and aristocracy. So I don't think you have this phenomenon of a very well insulated social class of people who have run everything and have been running everything for the last 400 years here, like you would in England.
It's pretty different from like Poland was dramatic. Some of the time it was literally grabbing farm people and just physically stuffing them into a university and saying, that's your room, go do the thing, you're now a Marxist, and then rounding up a bunch of educated people and just shooting them in the head.
Yeah.
Loads and loads of young, educated men, like, he's too posh, bang, he gets the bullet.
Yeah, we would have been shot.
I probably would have been shot.
Yeah,
but not here. Serbia wasn't quite that revolution, was it?
No. But it was a socialist society that functioned on the socialist ideals. All big business was nationalized, I believe, and you could own your own shop or restaurant or whatever, and it was okay. But I think in the end, what happened here was much more humane during that period, and that a lot more humanity exists in people now, but there was a huge leveling of society and opportunity. And, the socialism here actually worked for, a little while, really well. And it was a really good example of a pretty good, even though it was a dictatorship, Tito wasn't having you cut in his grass, but
as dictators go, he wasn't, wasn't the
he
worst.
was kind of a friendly, benevolent seeming dictator to a lot of people, I suppose.
Yeah, I hear mostly positive things about it.
But
Obviously,
the result
dictators
is
are cunts.
now you have a Belgrade through all the troubles where everybody kind of has a chance here. Everybody's in the same shit. Even us foreigners are welcome into a thing. And even though we kind of do live in a bubble of our own sort of whatever, like Serbian people treat us a lot better than they treat each other.
Oh, that's a weird bit of privilege. Like, I've still got this British embarrassment about the little advantages I get. Like police, when they pull people over, if you don't have ID, that could be a bit of a problem. No problem for me. They just say like, "Where's your ID?" What is the ID? What? All right, mate. How you doing? And the conversation ends.
Yeah. That happened to me in Thailand a couple of weeks ago. But same thing. They checked all the IDs of the Thais. That's a institutional sort of thing. But that's mostly the police don't want to bother with writing up foreigners for stuff. Or even
I think there must be some sort of message from the top saying like, hey, if you piss people off too much, then they're not going to be touristy. Because at the moment,
not even that. But it's a mix of that to be nice to foreigners. But mostly it's like, okay, so they arrest a foreigner in Belgrade. That immediately will go to their boss, who's then going to have to make a call. Do we prosecute this person? And then that it might even go to the diplomatic level if the charges are serious enough, if anything serious. And so there would be a systemic sort of like, let's not deal with this hassle because Serbia only has so much diplomatic weight. Whereas a country like China will arrest us if we do anything wrong in their country and lock us up. And no. Where a country like Serbia would be like, no, let's be nice to these guys. So we're in a really good situation. But I just feel that, people here treat each other much more in an open way in terms of class. And they don't really have those prejudices that I grew up with and you grew up with and all this stuff. And it's a very beautiful thing because
I feel like we need more of a list of this prejudice thing. Okay, so language is key. One other thing, like I noticed,
access to education, access to healthcare.
I started with the healthcare because it is there in Scotland. Like you have access across the board, and it doesn't seem to like limit the class divide very much at all.
But you have to go to the what do you call the surgery in your own neighborhood? The doctor's office in your own neighborhood.
I've never found any class distinctions. It's all pretty similar.
All right. Well, I don't know.
I think I've been taken away. One thing I noticed, like if you're in Scotland and you're addicted to heroin, if you're lower class, it's because of your class. If you're upper class, there's a reason. It must be special.
Yeah.
Like it's a natural thing. It's all less shocking.
So apparently, Yugo-socialism was built on loans, is one of the comments here. So. Yeah.
That's a weird one. Every so often I hear somebody saying like, "Oh, the Yugoslavia couldn't have worked because it was built on loans." Like, hang on, how did all the other countries do? Like, isn't that across the board? I mean, I don't know if it was a great idea or not, if the loans were well structured or not. But I do know that it's weird to say like, "Oh, this one country they had like huge debt, unlike USA and the UK. We never have. We don't go into debt."
Okay, so wrapping up, racism, sexism, and classism here in Serbia. Are you satisfied that as a white foreign male of certain economic bracket, which is above most average local people, these are not affecting you.
Yeah.
It's
basically
good.
not affecting me.
I mean, the big one to be afraid of is the racism, of course, if it comes to a point where, they want us all out. Anyways, guys, thanks a lot. This was a surprisingly easy to do thing. Thanks to the guys in the comments. Sour Banana, good luck with your real estate purchases in Serbia. I want to actually hear more about that, Sour Banana. Can you please write to me at eric@eric.rs, ERIK@ERIK.rs, and I actually want to interview you about your experience buying property in Serbia, because lots of people ask me about this and I haven't done it, so I don't know what the situation is. So Sour Banana, can you please write to me, eric@eric.rs? Because lots of people have been asking and would like to know. So thanks a lot, Malin, for joining me on this. This was a nice surprise. We'll do this again when we have a topic to talk about, okay?
It's been a random one. Yeah, maybe a bit of basic structure.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
more tasteful topic.
We hit the button and we did this for more than an hour, and now it's time to stop. Bye, everybody.